I never liked the term machine translation anyways. It just sounds so cold and, it just sounds so mechanical.
Hey everyone, and welcome to Slator Pod. Today on the podcast, we welcome Rick Woyde, co-founder of Pairaphrase, an AI-powered MT translation management system, or as we now call them, Rick, language technology platforms. In our most recent piece of research, we rebranded the TMSs to LTPs. So hi, Rick, and thanks so much for joining.
Thanks for having me, Florian.
Where in the world are you joining us from today? What part of the world?
I am in rainy Birmingham, Michigan, and we are a suburb of Detroit. We're about 20 minutes north of Detroit.
All right. Welcome, Detroit. So, we're here as always in also rainy Zurich, Switzerland. It's been raining for like 3 weeks, but, let's get started with the podcast.
We're getting the same weather.
It's terrible. Yeah, it's super hot in the south of Europe and kind of weird here now. All right. So, Pairaphrase, tell us a bit about first your kind of professional background, entrepreneurial story. You also, I think, ran a couple other businesses. So tell us more about that.
I guess I'm a typical entrepreneur in the sense that I dropped out of college and, started working. And, I've always been an entrepreneur, even when I was a child. It's kind of come natural to me. And I did run through a couple of different businesses to get here. I've had many ups and downs. I've had success, failure, everything in between. And I've run businesses here in the Detroit area for most of my life. But I also ran a business in Stuttgart, Germany for a while, and also Mexico City. So it was a great experience, even though I didn't make any money and I lost a bunch of money. It was a great experience to live in these different places and these different cultures.
So was that behind the kind of idea to get into the language space? Because I guess German and then Spanish.
That's a good question. I grew up in a trilingual household. My mother was Uruguayan and my dad was German, and they met, through the World War II thing, and so, language has always been a part of our household. My dad, like a typical immigrant, when he came here, they looked at, well, what skills do you have that are unique that we can use? And it happened to be that he spoke all these different languages. And so now we're talking a long time ago, and this is before LSPs were even there. And so he started translating into Spanish because he moved to Uruguay as a small child. And then from there, they asked him, well, can you find translators for Italian and for French and these other languages? And then, voila, your first LSPs were born. And I think a lot of LSPs were born that way, where a translator was given some work and they said, well, we need help with these other languages. Can you help us out?
Absolutely. That's a very classic kind of founder story. And then you ask your friend, you ask your colleague, and then it kind of continues to scale from there. So how's your German? Still okay, or a little bit rusty?
Terrible. In fact, the funny thing is when I was living in Stuttgart, I was hoping to get better at German again. And so I would go around and speak German to everybody, the bakery, the restaurants, what have you. And they would just speak English back to me, and their English was bad too. So I used to joke with them. I'm like, listen, your English isn't any better than my bad German. So, didn't quite work out the way I wanted it to.
Yeah, I guess south of Germany is not really known for fluent English, but nice little accent they have, very close to what we speak here in Switzerland. Anyway, let's move on to Pairaphrase. So, co-founded Pairaphrase. Obviously, you have a background in kind of the language industry, extended language industry. So, Pairaphrase is an LTP, language technology platform, TMS. So, what was the market gap at the time you founded it? Because it was founded maybe about eight years ago, about 9 years ago. And what was the gap you were trying to fill? And also, this is a really tough and very competitive space. The form of TMS space, very, very competitive. So what drew you to that?
I think it's a couple of things. At the time I had a small LSP, and so I had access to customers. And I began asking them, very simple question: are you using Google Translate? So we're talking about when Google kind of really broke. I would say, when they really broke the MT code and really got, it became somewhat of a professional tool. And everybody was using it. And so I asked them some questions like, what are you using it for? And they were using it for email communications and things like that, where they needed a really quick translation and it didn't have to be perfect. The classic, I just need, I'm doing some gisting here. And so that was part of it. And then in addition to that, as an agency owner, one of the things I always struggled with was that when we would get a request for quote, we would have to, give it to a project manager to do an analysis. And the Trados, we were a Trado shop, like pretty much everybody was at the time. And I found that the tool was a very complex and cumbersome tool to learn how to use. And it just drove me bananas that I would have to wait or I would have to interrupt someone just to get an analysis. And so I was kind of determined to come up with an app that was simple to use. And it kind of runs, at the time, it kind of ran, in conflict with what a lot of the localization professionals were doing, which was they had pretty complex software out there to do translations. So that was one of my goals is, number one, I saw that there was a market for translation software. I think translation is something that's done by a broader audience than just localization managers. I think that there's pretty much everybody now in an organization that requires or produces a translation at some point in their day. And so it was really a combination of those two things, this desire for some simplicity in a complex kind of environment. And also the idea that, everybody's going to be doing translation. And I think that's what we're seeing today.
In a sense, it was driven by simplicity, both on kind of the technology and maybe the user interface side as well. Because some of these bigger tools can get very, very complex because they cater to thousands of different use cases. I guess maybe not thousands, but hundreds. But did you have any background in software engineering, or did you partner with third-party developers? How did you go about this one?
No, I had no experience in software at the time. Um, so,
Bold move.
well, I felt like I didn't have much to lose. So, no, I didn't have any experience in software at that time. So I stumbled around and I went to networking events and I asked really dumb questions and people looked at me like, you're not a very intelligent guy here. Especially since I was older, like when I got into software, it was still very much the young hustle mode, where developers would code all night long and sleep during the day. And, it was during that period of time. So, I went through, all the humiliation of asking dumb questions and looking, not very intelligent. And that was kind of the beginning of the journey. And then I met a designer by the name of Curtis Jackson, who I had known for many years, and he was working with a developer. And so I started out with those two guys, and they taught me a lot.
And what about now? Did you pick up some basic coding skills, or just a good eye for design and user flow and things like that?
Yeah, I'm more on the problem solving side of things. So the way my brain works is that whenever I'm out and about doing things, buying things or experiencing things, my mind automatically goes to, what, we could do this better. There's a better way to do this. So that's that. I think I do that all day long, basically. So I'm not a technical person per se, but I have figured out, I think, how to manage software products and how to work with designers and developers who are two different people, by the way. A lot of people would like developers to be designers and they're not, and a lot of people would like designers to be developers and they're not. So it took a while, but fortunately I had a lot of patient people who let me go through that learning curve to get to a point where I feel capable of managing these activities.
Can you walk us through a couple of kind of case studies, client case studies? No need for names if sensitive, but or if you do have some testimonials, just 2 to 3 use cases where Paraphrase is deployed with customers.
We have a variety of different customers, and some of them are schools where they're translating things like IEPs and other parental communications. There's a growing need for that in the United States. In addition to that, we do a lot of work with multilingual corporations, and they are more of the traditional LSP type of client, in the sense that they are uploading files, they're collaborating with reviewers, editing files, they're maintaining translation memories and things like that. And those are the kind of people that we cater to, that maybe they're not highly technical people, but they understand the basic translation workflow of someone produces a translation, we review it, edit it. They understand the value that translation memory and glossaries and things like that bring. And they're kind of like me, in a sense that they're looking for technology that is powerful and does the job, but is easy to use.
Very interesting. Hospitals and schools, you said, and you mentioned an acronym which I didn't for the listeners. Tell us more about what was that again?
It's called an IEP, and
IEP. What's an IEP?
It's basically a report that teachers put together about a student who's maybe struggling in class. And
got it.
And after a certain number of students, schools need to produce those IEPs and other parental communications in other languages.
Is that state legislation or federal, or where's the demand from that coming from?
It's a combination of both. Now, obviously, here in the States, I mean, it's really hard to ignore that, there's some political winds that are changing things that have obviously hurt some of the translation and interpretation providers. But really what they're doing is they're just pushing the need and the down to the state level is what's happening, because the students aren't going away.
So how did you come across this segment, like schools and I believe also hospitals? Initially, was that a segment you were in already before with the LSP, what we now call LSI, or was that you had the product and targeted these clients specifically?
Thank you for the update on the acronyms, because I can't keep up with all these changes.
We just did this. So basically, it's just TMS became LTP and LSP became LSI, Language Solutions Integrator, because they're doing so much more than a language service, right?
No, it's clearly changing tremendously. No, I would say what happened is, at the beginning, we didn't know who our customers were going to be. So we just kind of did a splatter type of approach, and we said, this is who we are. We support all these file formats. We started writing content, started attracting customers, and then they kind of lead you to where you need to go.
Got it. Very interesting. And those they would kind of use it on a recurring basis. You have like some kind of SaaS deals with them, or they would buy it as needed, or what was
we're a SaaS. There? So it's a minimum of an annual subscription, and so in that sense, it's a traditional SaaS. And then there's some other ways that you can get, if you have smaller needs, you can kind of get into using the platform. But it's basically an annual or multi-year agreement.
So it's been like almost 4 years now since, I don't know, people call it the ChatGPT moment. So like the AI, the beginning of the AI boom or this cycle of the AI boom. So how are you navigating this? How have you navigated it? What was the impact so far? What are you thinking about kind of this part of the cycle that we're in 4 years in?
It's definitely the most disruptive cycle we've been in a very long time. MT or AI translation, what are we calling it now? Is MT going away?
MT is actually going away. It starts to sound a little bit kind of old school. So yeah, we've been starting to call it AI translation, just right. To not have to, because these AI systems can do so much more, but also translation, hence AI translation.
I never liked the term machine translation anyways. It just sounds so cold and, it just sounds so mechanical. I never really liked that term anyways. But we've had to adapt too. The great thing is the market's getting bigger for translation software. I think that everybody is going to use translation software that produces translations one way or another. You might be using Canva and using their translation software, or maybe you need something that covers a lot of file formats like a Paraphrase or someone else. So yeah, you got to step up to the challenge of AI. Now, personally, I think it's exciting. I mean, I look at change as two ways. You've got two choices. Change is either going to kill your business, or you take advantage of the change and you grow your business. And so that's kind of what we're focused on. And we've got a whole suite of generative AI tools that we're rolling out that I think our clients are going to like. For instance, now with us, you can now translate. You can use ChatGPT as a fully fledged file translation engine, just like Google Translate or anybody else. You can upload an XLIF file, for instance, if you wanted, and you could translate it with ChatGPT and get an XLIF file back. And then we're developing our own GPT too, which is obviously kind of laser focused on translation tasks. And in addition to that, one of the great things today is that if you do some model training, you can get some pretty darn good results very quickly. And we're seeing more and more users that are gonna create content, original content instead of translation with Paraphrase. Kind of like what DeepL is doing with the Write program, but ours is prompt based. So you write a prompt that says, provide me a Spanish page of our API page in Spanish, and then, voila, you get a written content instead of translated content.
In terms of the language coverage, like what are you seeing in your part of the world? Is it mostly Spanish? Is it almost only Spanish, or do you have a lot of other languages that are requested and running through the platform?
There's quite a bit of different languages. I mean, obviously Spanish is huge, right? I mean, it's just big everywhere. Um, so Spanish is definitely one of the leading languages, but here even in the States with the U.S. schools, we've seen an increased demand for Arabic and Dari, and all these languages. I mean, traditionally, immigration has driven what translation you need, and that's still the case today. So, but then we have European customers and we have Asian customers, and they're obviously translating into European and Asian languages too. And one of the great things about LLM based translation too is that you're no longer restricted by those languages that either Google or Microsoft or DeepL supplies. For instance, we had a customer request Swiss French, and with an LLM, I can dial that up in 5 minutes.
Yeah, don't ask me about my Swiss French. It's probably as bad as your German.
I doubt it.
It's been a long, long time. All right. So when you're integrating these AI translation engines and the LLMs, right? So how do you integrate? How do you decide what to integrate? Like, there's so much out there that one could integrate.
Yeah, that's the tough one, isn't it? That's really the most difficult. That and the ability to add features and not complicate or compromise the user experience. I think those are the two biggest questions. And again, I think you got to let your customers kind of tell you where to go. One of the great things about a software company in comparison to a service company is that we can pivot real quickly. If somebody needs if there's a demand for a different translation application than we're developing, no problem. It's a lot easier on the software side. We can develop, we're software developers. We'll develop anything the customers need.
Including a real-time speech translation mobile app.
Yeah, that's one of the things we're working on now that we're getting ready to launch this year. Our schools have more needs than just translating content. They actually meet with students and parents. They actually drive to their homes and meet with them in some cases. And the interpretation solutions today, there are no perfect interpretation solutions. And what the schools, for instance, and what the hospitals are doing, they sign up for something like a language line account, and then they also use internal bilingual people, and they're finding that neither of those are perfect. And I don't think that anybody's toolkit today is going to be just one application anymore. I think you're going to have a toolkit of several different tools that you use. And so our app will just be another one of those. And it'll connect to hospital EHR systems and whatever school systems as well, so that you can transfer your conversations from our app into their medical or student records.
It's just a very different type of business than the kind of the text-based translation. So yeah, it's probably quite a big project for you guys to spin that up.
Well, it's fun. I mean, I get to sit here and work with really talented people and try to develop solutions. I mean, the way I look at things is like I mentioned to you earlier. I see problems and I enjoy trying to solve them.
And one of the things is, as I think also when we did the research, it's like really keeping the UI simple, keeping it quite accessible for the users. But how do you prioritize having kind of enough features and being sophisticated enough while still keeping like kind of a clean UI and making it easy to navigate?
It's a tough thing to navigate. And there's actually a third component to that, and that is demonstrating that value, which I actually think LSPs have kind of missed the boat on demonstrating that value. For instance, we have a lot of clients, that are used to just doing I email a file to a translation company, they email it back, they send me a bill, I'm done. And now they're knee deep in translation, and then they're discovering things like text expansion that they weren't aware of. So coming up with that powerful solution that also demonstrates and communicates that value and keeping that interface nice and clean and simple is a challenge. And you really got to be clever. I mean, that's really what I get paid for, is to kind of navigate that line and come up with those features, but also making it easy to use. Like, for instance, one of the things that we do, an example of that, a very small example of that, is that in most TM tools, right, you got to go do a setup and create a TM. This is going to be a language pair, do a TM, and then you start translating. With Pairaphrase, you translate, you edit, you hit save, and we create the TM for you in the background. So a lot of those powerful features we try to put in the background and have them automated whenever possible, so that the user doesn't get bogged down with all these extra tasks that in many cases I feel are really unnecessary today. And, it's interesting to see that the translation industry is starting to catch up with that idea. When we first got started with Pairaphrase, and this is one of the reasons that we never went, until now, we've never really tried to do business with LSPs, is because we just didn't think that they were ready for our approach. All the tools that I saw at the time, like MemSource and things like that, they kind of had that Trados feel, where we're going to give you so much technology, we're going to give you so many buttons to press, and then you only wind up pressing 10% of those buttons as a result. I don't know how well your Microsoft Word or Excel skills are, but when I see that interface of theirs, I'm like, I barely know how to use any of this stuff. And I think that's the case for most people.
That's why we're on Google Workspace, Rick, and not on Microsoft. It was a beautiful moment, when we started Slator, moving from the Microsoft stack to the Google stack. It was just it was nice and easy now. It always has been for 10 years.
But you're seeing that now. You're seeing companies and LSPs begin to embrace that simplicity. And the value I think that an LSP brings is a little bit different than what has been communicated in the past.
Yeah, that's why we now call them, again, language solutions integrators, because they need to integrate a lot more than they used to, right? It's no longer getting the file, translating it, sending it back, but like you need to be able to put a few pieces together to still basically remain in business and be competitive.
Yeah, I'm going to need you to send me like an updated list of all these acronyms so I sound current.
Just two. I'll send you 2 articles. So we put that up, and I'll send you the report. So I want to talk to you about sales and marketing. I mean, so, Pairaphrase has been, I'm not sure if I'm doing it justice, but a little bit under the radar, at least from our perspective. But I noticed you guys, for example, reactivated your YouTube channel recently. So how did you manage to grow? Like, was it mostly product led? Were you knocking on doors? Were you doing business development? Yeah, and what are the plans kind of going forward to be more visible in the marketplace?
Yeah, so no, you're absolutely right. We've kind of been under the radar, especially in the translation business, and we're kind of inching our way forward in the industry, so to speak. And so that's completely accurate. And honestly, we got started with SEO. This is kind of the way I work in a lot of cases. Is we created this website, gets no traffic, like 90% of the websites out there. And I went on LinkedIn. I mean, this is how I did it. I went on LinkedIn. I reached out to 3 SEO people. Only one replied, interesting enough. And I began working with her, and we just started writing blogs, and we started getting website traffic. So we've kind of built on that, and now we have a complete marketing department led by Candace Chapman. And now we've got content writers, we've got technical SEO, we've got paid advertising, we've got a link builder on staff, so that it just kind of grew. But really, it's just trying to communicate our story and who we are, and getting eyeballs on it.
Even that, it's getting more difficult.
Yeah,
We've noticed that the AI overviews from Google are now really starting to do some damage. Not just but generally, right? I mean,
yeah.
I'm seeing websites that are dropping. Ours is a bit affected, not too much, but it's yeah, quite interesting. So you have Google just taking what you blogged about and then kind of mushing it all into their AI overview and like sending you like half the traffic it used to. So I'm not sure how that's going to work out for Google long term.
I think they're going to have to rethink that. Everything you just said is absolutely accurate. We're experiencing the same thing. Clearly, ChatGPT and Perplexity and possibly Claude as well, that they're starting to chip away at that search dominance that Google has had. And the new Google experience um, is not as good. I mean, I'll just come out and say it. The AI overview is pushing everything down on the page, and we're having the same experience as you are. The only thing we're seeing is that we're seeing more referrals now from these AI engines.
Exactly. So that's a nice add-on.
Yeah.
That's a great add-on. But like basically with Google, the deal was like you give us content and we give you traffic. That was never the deal with ChatGPT. They were always saying we'll just take basically doing we take all that you have and
Yeah.
maybe we'll send you referral.
But the basics are still the same. So what works for Google search also works for Chat GPT.
Right.
And it's a constant thing. I mean, you every day you got to wake up and market your business, and then make sure that you're producing content and digital products in a way that will get searched and will get found. But yeah, it's harder, no question, Florian. It's definitely harder.
It's harder. We also see ChatGPT traffic now, which is it's kind of interesting. Like popped out of nowhere, all of a sudden you get like a fraction of your traffic coming from ChatGPT, and even some leads, like some calls have come. And hey, I had this conversation with ChatGPT, and it pointed me to your website. I'm like, okay, that's interesting.
That's just the beginning. I mean, one of the guys that influences me is a guy over at SaaStr called Jason Lemkin, and he's a very hands-on CEO, even more than I am. I mean, he's literally trying to program an AI agent on his own, and he actually says he's got a SDR working that an AI agent SDR that is actually creating some leads, and actually in some cases doing a better job than a human salesperson. So we're still we're at the very beginning, I feel, of a new period of time.
So what's in the roadmap for you guys? I think I saw Paraphrase GPT. That's something that's upcoming somewhere. So maybe tell us a bit more about that, and then generally like what's on the roadmap this year and next.
Yeah, so we've got two big initiatives going. So when ChatGPT came out, we added some ChatGPT technology, some features to our app. We now have a sidebar experience where you can do that prompting that you do in ChatGPT. So you don't have to leave Paraphrase to do that. You can do that kind of research stuff on a sidebar while you're producing a translation. And then we've kind of built on that and added more features. And one of them includes our own GPT. So we're trying to produce a GPT that does a little bit better job at translation than maybe these generic models.
Got it. Got it.
And then it's all siloed, so every customer can have a different experience. If you've got some content you can put in the back end, and that's another thing that's great about the LLM world compared to the translation memory NMT world, is that if you upload content in English, it will actually influence the French translation or the German translation. And you don't need to do that whole alignment thing, which companies have had to do in the past. And you don't even need to have bilingual content in some cases, and it'll influence and help you create a better translation. The one thing that I tell clients, that the most important thing I tell clients above and beyond that, and now we're going back to basic stuff, is create a glossary. And years ago in the human translation world, I did a study. I was invited to participate in a study with General Motors. At the time, I was leading an SAE. Maybe you've heard of it, the J1950 translation quality metric. And I was leading that committee. And they asked me to participate in this study on translation errors. And 50% of what we call translation errors are really just wrong terms. So I tell clients, the biggest bang for the buck is make a glossary, and you'll cut your errors and the amount of time you spend editing a translation by 50% overnight.
I agree. Glossaries are super key, and now kind of can be context for these LLMs, right? Which didn't it wasn't the case before, and I hated alignment so much. I remember actually having to do it like super early in my career, like actually doing it. I was like, what am I doing here? Like, how is this a thing?
There's nobody that wants to do that job. I mean, that's
Yeah.
a really tedious job, and the customers didn't understand that one of the challenges with that, for instance, was content generally. You'll have generic content that works all over the globe, and then companies will take some content out and then add their own local content, and then that just blows alignment up.
Yeah.
So we've got these generative AI features and products coming out, including our own GPT. As I mentioned, you're going to be able to you can translate a file with our GPT, you can translate a file with Chat GPT, exact same experience as working with our NMT engines. And then you're going to get that whole prompting experience where you can write original content, with a prompt instead of the old fashioned. I think the days of opening Microsoft Word and then typing out, an entire document, I think those days are coming to a close. So there's that product, and then we got the mobile product coming out.
All right, busy year, busy rest of the year, busy probably start of the next year. So, Rick, it was great having you on today. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for your time. I really appreciate it, and I hope your audience enjoys the conversation we had.